Check, check, check. I'm seeing it on YouTube. Let me know if I've been talking for the last 9 minutes. I saw myself live on one of the feeds. Uh, did I just waste 9 minutes? Oh man, Scott says I just appeared. Well, I don't know what happened. I hit the button and I haven't changed anything. I looked at the page. Maybe I should have stayed on the page when I hit the big red button. It looked like it was coming up, so I switched over here. So sorry about that. All right, well, I'll do a short version then. Welcome to Pi Day Friday. It's just me today. Scott is greasing the wheels with our overseas partners who are involved in printing the book. So that's just so weird. Sorry about that. If you want to get in contact with me, this is an AMA. Today it's Dave Rush AMA. Usually it's Dave Rush AMA and Scott dramas, but Scott's going to work the back channel. He's fine. He's healthy. He's doing okay. He's just busy as all get out. There's a lot of moving parts to getting a book written and printed, and we're in the last inch to do that. And I spoke with Scott this morning, and he said overseas, where that last inch occurs, kind of exploded last night. So his presence is sorely required, and he's working on that. But he is keeping an eye on the chat feed here, and obviously keeping an eye on me and letting me know I wasn't visible. So sorry about that. All right, well, you didn't miss anything really important. So it is 11 minutes past the hour. Let's see who's turned up. I see you've been texting while I was there, and that was part of the reason I assumed everything was just going on. Let's see. Alan Doug, let's acknowledge everybody. Greetings, Tullowit. Turned up a half an hour earlier or so, as did Andre D. How you doing, buddy? I'm here. Background today, says Scott. Ellen Duggan is here. Zach Morrill. So you're back in the fold. Good to see you again. I know you have been studying your brains out and prepping for this new job. So we are very pleased to see you. Red Tube is back. He had to bail after just a couple of minutes the other day on Mike's AMA. Duggan. Dave Rush is here. Okay, well, yeah, so that's weird. You missed it. A whole 9-minute diatribe of welcoming and all that good stuff. That's all right. Oh, good. Lots of stuff is scrolled up while we were doing that. Jane Slayer, for a topic to access NAT resources from outside the land, wouldn't that be port forwarding? That is one of the three methods that we're going to talk about today, but there are two more. Port forwarding is great, but it has some important drawbacks. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, certainly. And Jane Slayer, I am about done with your question. I will have it be an answer before the end of the weekend. It's not for lack of research or anything like that. It is for lack of research. I haven't done much on it. Every now and again at the company, we have a all hands on deck, drop whatever you're doing right now. And I had two of those pop up this week. So I got them done reasonably quickly, but that put my other projects on back burners, and I had to put a lot of effort into that. And then this particular project, it took, I was burning the midnight oil last night till 2, and then worked for another 4 or 5 hours on it this morning to put final touches because I hadn't touched it early in the week. So I imagine there's a lot of commentary that says, where the heck is Dave as we roll on 204? David did joke earlier about starting at 2:30. Yeah, I'm there. Passing it all up. That's weird. Sorry, I did hit the big red button on time. Alex is here. Alex, definitely got to talk to you today. Don't leave if you have to leave early in the next 15 minutes. Okay, we got to talk. We got to talk. There he is. Hey, okay, so I turned up at 2:09 and the world's great. I'm here. Yeah, I found some really fun little Star Wars posters, kind of posterette things. Put one up last week, got one this week, got another one for next week. And then the stuff that's going to go up the 3 weeks after that. I am just stoked. Yeah, you saw that, did you? I heard my name get used and associated with Papa, so I thought I would change my name just for today on the Zoom thing. Greetings, Maven Feliciano. You have been a busy person the last week or so, talking with Mike and talking with everybody on Discord. Really appreciating that. I love your thoughtful and insightful questions. We now hear and see Dave. Thanks. Is that a new shirt? Yeah, I have been collecting these things. I've decided that at least for the next year or so, maybe 2 years if we last that long, that the official uniform of drama, at least for me, is going to be a short-sleeved Hawaiian. So I slowly collect them in challenging sizes. I've got a dozen now. I'm looking for 3 more. And that way, it's, one a week. So I can run through them in 12 weeks or so before I have to repeat. So yes, this one is new. Okay, Discord later, says Alex. All right, so since Alex is bringing up Discord, I too shall bring up Discord. Really, I will. Not that, but this. So almost everybody here in the live show right now is familiar with the fact that Jose Braden, a friend of ours, set up a Discord channel to discuss Mike Meyers and Mike Meyers training. Ooh, we got to keep that up. Things that he talks about on his AMAs, and we talk about some of my stuff as well. Sorry, there it is. Find my buttons. When Scott's not here, I do a totally different arrangement of things, so I got to find where everything's are. Oh, that's the specials. I don't want to do that. I can do it this way. All right, so the unofficial Discord channel, operated, owned, managed by Jose Braden and whoever he's appointed as moderators. So Total Seminars has nothing to do with this, but it's called the unofficial Total Seminars Discord channel. And you are cordially invited. If you're watching this on the archive, by all means, if you haven't joined us yet, please do. We get together, we talk, we video, we chat, we text, we do it all. This invite changes every day. So this is the one that's good for today. Pause the screen if you're watching this on archive and pump that in, or you can just use your favorite search engine and type in Discord unofficial Total Seminars channel, and you will find us. As long as I had that one up, let's cover that. Discounts for the week. We create a weekly discount. If you're watching this on archive, it's too late. Watch the live one and see what the new one is, because we don't advertise this anywhere except in Mike's AMAs and in my drama. And it changes week to week. Sometimes it repeats this week to next week, but this one's new. We didn't do this one last week, and we did a different one the week before. So this week's special, 50% off all CompTIA Total Tester practice exams and Total Tester bundles. Bundles have some other products in them and the practice exam, depending on what they are. It may be Total Sims, Total Tester. There's something else in there. So head on over. And we don't have just A+, Net+, Sec+. We've got ITF+. We just put up, or we are just putting up Linux Plus questions, I saw. And we've had CEH, CYSA questions. There's just tons and tons and tons over there. So if you're studying any of the CompTIA certs, project management, we got PMP practice test up there, and a whole bunch of them. Go on and take a look at, see what all there, see what you're interested in studying, and use the practice test to help prepare for your exam. So any Total Tester product that we've got out there, 50% off. The code Mars 2021, because it's March and because we've had a very successful so far landing and beginning operations of another rover on Mars, Perseverance. So very exciting. This is good through this Sunday, March 7th. And if you're a teacher, you know the drill. If you're conducting classes right now, you want to get in touch with Kathy Y at totalsem.com. She is ready to fill boxes of training materials for you at cheap and at zero prices. So contact her, Kathy Y, KATHYY at totalsem.com. Hey, my voice did lower a little bit. Maybe a little bit of sip helped out. All right, what else is cooking here? We were okay. We got 18 people here now. I'm going to do it now. I got word. This is my news of the day thing, but I'm doing it right now because I'm so excited about it and so thrilled. Oh God, I'm such an idiot. I was answering Maven's question. Is that a new shirt? You were talking about phrases to go on shirts, not this. Oh well, whatever. No, it's not the Netherlands, Andre. At any rate, I got word this morning that one of our regulars on Mike's AMAs and on my AMAs and in the Discord channel has achieved a new milestone. Talking about our friend Alice, who goes by Alex on here. Alex, congratulations. I have heard that you are now Network Plus certified. You have passed the N10007, and we knew that you don't like to brag about yourself or talk about yourself. But I heard about it and I am very excited about it. Huge round of applause, a double round of applause to you. You have been studying so diligently. It's got to be quite the load off of your mind. I'm thrilled and pleased for you and just congratulate you. Okay. Using live chat and follow along timestamps, passing up 2:10 right now. So 10 minutes behind, but that's okay. We're going to get started on today's presentation between 1:30 and 1:40 or so. It's interesting. It's exciting. My pleasure, Zach. Oh, good. And another one. RedTB3. I've always called you RedTube. I know it doesn't stand for that, but RedTB3 also Net Plus certified. Man, you guys are going to have to compete for jobs now. What the heck? Okay, very good. Congratulations, Red. That's wonderful. Oh, sure. I was just getting there, of course, but Scott fed that to me on back channel to make sure that I got it pointed out. I try to get on as much as possible, but yeah, we understand how work gets involved in interfering with these great shows. Oh, Sec Plus. Oh, no, you're now on to Sec Plus. Okay, very good. I'll be on Discord for a bit, Alex. Right, I'll be on Discord also when this is done. Take me about 10 minutes or so to clean up. I've made a lot of changes in the set today to try and improve the lighting. It's better, but it's got work to do. And cleaned off my desk a little bit. I got some, because I had more equipment that I had to pile up for today's shows. So a good reason to clean up. What's the purpose of Mac binding? Mac binding. I know that that's something I know, but I'm not putting the terms together. So give me just 14 seconds to refresh my memory and see if I think I know it. Looking up, reading. So I'm using a new search engine. I've switched to Quant, QWANT.com, for reasons that I'll talk about in a few minutes. But this is a grand test. I'd like to see how much better or not as good a search engine it is as the big, top name stuff. That's weird. What is Mac binding? Every device has MAC address, number unique to it while accessing the internet. Everything is assigned an IP address. Come on, get to the point here. Binding together the MAC and the IP address. So all requests in that IP address serve only that computer. Okay, got it. Purpose. I can see from the article that I just read what it is. I am not sure, without reading a lot more information, why it is, which is the nature of your question. What the heck is that? Why keep moving to weird places? There we go. So MAC binding says every network interface card in a computer has a MAC address. Simple enough. That address can be spoofed, it can be changed, but it exists. And every host on the internet has an IP address. MAC binding says, the computer, I program, am going to associate those two things together and they must always be associated together. If something changes, if somebody spoofs a MAC address, if DHCP changes this IP address, or if you change it because you've gone to a static address or whatever, your system will no longer work. MAC binding says the only way this thing works is when this one with this value is associated with this one with this value. So I'm going to presume it's some kind of security measure to make sure that if some nefarious or accidental process were to change one of those things, it would prevent you from getting to the internet, and it would prevent resources that historically have been able to get to you or to this host from the internet would no longer be able to do it. So I'm speculating there. I'll do a little more digging and research. Look at you. You passed the test, and now you're asking for all the questions. Router mode and gateway mode. Okay. That one's really simple. Router mode is a router that says, I have received a packet for a specific network address that I either know about. Actually, that's it, that I know about. The router says, I've got a routing table in there, and I know about all of these routes. And I know that when I receive a packet that's destined for network address 99.0.0.0, I've got that in my table, and I know which interface is the best one. Maybe it's only a 2-node interface router, but some routers have many more interfaces. So I know the best interface that leads to that destination network, and I will forward the packet out that interface. That's router mode. In gateway mode, a packet comes in and it has a destination network address on it, but that address isn't in the router's table. Well, the router can do one of two things. It can go out, and if it uses the appropriate kind of routing protocols, try to find that network. So we'll put a hold on the packet for a while. He'll do some research. And then if he finds it, he'll put it in his router table and then forward it out in router mode. Or he says, just like your host says, I know about one network address, the one that I'm on. So if I've got a 192.168.1.45 address, I am on network 192.168.1. I know how to deliver packets and frames to anybody on that network. But if there's ever a network that I've learned about that I don't know where it is, it's not on my local address, well, I have built into my system this value called default gateway. It's a router, and the job of that router is to sit around and wait for Dave to have a packet that he doesn't know how to deliver. And so I will dump it off to my gateway router, and then it's up to the router to figure out how to deliver it. So in gateway mode, the router does the same thing. It says, I have a routing table, and if I ever receive an inbound packet that's destined for one of the entries in that table, I know how to send it out. But just like a traditional computer host, he's got a dump off value, a gateway router that says, if I ever get a packet and I don't know how to deliver it, I don't know its destination, it's not in my table, then I'll just look under default gateway. That's some gateway that's attached to one of my interfaces, and I'll just shoot it out to that router, that gateway, and we'll let him take care of it. So that's a gateway mode. Hope that helps. I miss tiki bars. You need to talk to Tullowit, my friend. Banana. I got banana. Let's just do that. Oh, okay. I knew I saw your name in the last day or so. It was on Discord. What's the weather there today? 70 degrees, sunny, light sprinkles. It's gorgeous here. 70 Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius. Tullowit, your weather never changes. Sunny with a chance of lava. All right, here goes. Thanks a lot, Banana. Everybody's going to pump in weather reports. Scott has reposted our AMA special and code. I am seeing badness. Stand by. Checking. Buffering. Okay, I appear to be back. Both of my feeds buffered at the same time. One of them is still buffering. But I'm going to presume that you can see me. Okay, back channel says you can see me, so that's weird, but man, if I'm going to work alone, that's when all the techno problems pop up, right? All right, moving along through questions and people who are here. Reading questions, lots of people talking to each other. Red Planet Rover, Red Rover, okay. Dilly. And I'm seeing myself move on this one. Weird. I know, red tuber's more fun to say. Yeah, I don't mean it out of anything that would have a negative connotation. It just looks like it's easy to pronounce. Pronounced? Patricia Grace earning a 7. Yeah, well, I punched into Discord on Wednesday, having been delayed, and I was being discussed. Somebody was saying something about he should have less of an Ernest Hemingway look. No, I like my look here, and so I'm adopting the Ernest Hemingway, at least name for the moment, not his persona. I can't drink scotch and go fishing all day, or run with the bulls. Oh Lord, Apple Talk, stop it. Yeah, lower left-hand corner, you will see that my label is no longer says R. David Rush, just for today. A Linux Plus question, Linux Plus questions. Yes, that would have come in handy a month ago, but you passed, and you know that's huge, man. I can't wait to pass mine. Very excited studying on that, as if I had nothing else to do. Reading questions. Very welcome, Alex. I'm so pleased for you and for RedTube. Ooh, Rick Allison. Greetings, Rick. Have you used Zoom on a Raspberry Pi? I'm struggling with Pi while using Zoom. The temp starts to run up. I attempted it probably 5 months ago or so and was not successful and have abandoned it since then. I keep it on my burner, but yes, I've attempted it. It didn't work, but a lot happens in 5 years. Zoom improves. There is no client. There is no Zoom application that will run on Zoom. I have heard people have had moderate success running it in the QEMU emulator, but that adds a lot of drag and sucks up a lot of memory, and I didn't bother to try that. So I'll try it again. I'm going to make a note on that one because that one's fun. Let's add this to the OQ file. Stand by. There's my NAS. Oh, you fooler, you. There we go. And I have an unanswered question here that I've ignored. Sorry about that. There was a question about Octoprint, and I apologize. Did not get that in. So I'll get on that. All right. Chat disconnected while we reconnect you. Successfully reconnected. I don't know what that was about. My network was still working. I was chatting with Scott. Tiki bars and tea less are opening slowly here. Good to hear, Tulowit. Good. I'm glad that helped, Alice. Well, I got to the end unless I super scrolled. Okay. No, I did not super scroll. We're coming up on the end of questions. You're probably bailing out because I've disappeared multiple times. Not my fault for a change. Yeah, I have a friend who ran with the Bulls and have joined many a drink with him, hearing the story. I never realized it was more than a 1-day event. I always thought it was just a 1-day thing, but no, there are lots of opportunities to get killed, not just the one shot. It's a bit of a Kenny Rogers look. I like Kenny until his scandals. I still like him, but okay. Well, let me see. We finished up here we're caught up on 234 roughly. I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to switch over to my notes, talk about news of the day, review of last week's project, and the teaser on this week's project. Then we'll come back, answer a few more questions, and then we'll get fired up on El Proyecto. So you go over here. Come on. Okay, there we go. So we'll start with the review. What we did last week, we finished a long process. We did a 3-session presentation on installing a chat server on a Raspberry Pi 4. The first session was theory and background and discussion. And then we took 2 sessions to install it. We didn't configure it because that's really easy. You just log in with your web server, with your web browser to the IP address of your web server, of your Rocket Chat server, using the port 3000. So I open up a browser window, I put in 192.168, 1 dot whatever my number was, 125 or something, :3000. And that takes us to the Rocket Chat server. And that says this is the first time anybody's ever tried to access it. So create an account, create a password, and that becomes the admin account. And it's a very simple project. So I didn't even bother to demonstrate it. Let's see. But in so doing, at least taking the demonstration that far, we discovered a problem. And that problem is it's only accessible from a computer inside the same network as the Rocket Chat server. And that's kind of useless. So today's project said, why don't we figure out, not just for Rocket Chat servers, but for any other kind of server or host or service that you have running on the NAT side of a network, to make it accessible from beyond your network, outside, somewhere across the internet or something like that. And there's some easy ways and there's some safe ways and there's some combinations of both of them. So that's what we're going to do today. We're generically calling this accessing NAT resources from the internet, but it simply means anything on the other side of a NAT router. And we'll get into why that's important and why you can't access things under normal circumstances from the outside and what we can do about it. On to news, tricks, traps, techniques of the week, things like that. So I think I have 4 little newsy things. One I'm already covered. I was so excited. I just couldn't wait. I'm not normally the impatient type, but Alice passing Net Plus and RedTube passing Net Plus, both huge and first items on my news. Also, unrelated to any of you, except those of you who are Texans, but I've been a Texan for 30 years or so now, and there's a culture in here. When you move to this state, it's very different than many, many, many other states in the union. And so you become a Texan, you get absorbed by the culture, you wear the cowboy hats and the powder blue suits and the cowboy boots and the belt buckles that are the size of a hubcap, and you mark certain historical events. Well, today is March 5th. If you're watching this on archive, now you know when we did this, and hopefully you already did. Tomorrow is March 6th, which is the day that Texans mark with sorrow and emotion, because after 13 days of fighting in the year 1836, the Alamo fell. So we mark that here in Texas. Look it up if you're not And if you're an American, you've heard of the Alamo, you know a little bit about its history. Probably if you're a Texan, you know a lot about its history. And if you're out of the nation, you may have heard about it. It's an interesting read from a historical event. Okay. I ran across something a little bit interesting that we can do some demos on. I found some utilities that will work on Raspberry Pis and some that won't, but they'll run on x86 platforms. Then let's call this, I want to know how fast the CPU in my Linux box is running. So let me fire up and share a terminal session with a Raspberry Pi. Okay, it's fired up. That's got a good size font. Let's share it. Even as we speak, Scott is typing on his computer right now. Are we supposed to be seeing this? I don't see it yet. There we go. He said, what, did Dave mention my name? All right, so I'm going to show you a number of tools and commands that you can use to garner information about your CPU that's running in your Linux box. And this is as close as you're going to get to the CPU type information. Where did you just go? Oh, over here, Goober. Close that. It's a running CPU Z on a PC. Nothing like that in Mac world. So one of them, let's try this. I'm just going to copy paste this so I don't typo anything. Zip, paste. So ls CPU. We know the ls command tells us a little bit about the file system. The ls CPU, not surprisingly, tells us something about our CPU. And it does not tell us directly how fast this CPU is running at this instant, but it tells me the max speed of this CPU. This is a this is R0P4. It has nothing to do with RPi4. This is a Raspberry Pi 3. So it runs 1.4 gigahertz or 1400 megahertz as its max speed. And the slowest it'll run is 600 megahertz. Someday, if you're interested, I'll go through what all this junk means. But I just want to talk about CPU speeds for today. All right, so that's one command. Now, here's a command that doesn't work on a Pi, but I want to show it to you because it will work on your x86. A lot of you are out there running virtual machines, running Oracle Box with Ubuntu and Mint and Debian and things like that. So here is a command. It'll work in here. It just doesn't show you all the information that it shows. It's dmessage, and you run it with a sudo. There is no dash there. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Sudo dmessage. And so this is device messages. It shows me all kinds of things about all kinds of devices in here, including information about the CPU core. Now you can see, let me clear this, that the command that I started to run this and then cleaned it off says pipe the output through grep and show me any lines that have the word or the term MHZ in there. Oops, gotta get rid of that. There we go. And there's two lines that have that. And this thing is case sensitive, so it'll only find lines that have capital M, capital H, small z. So there was two in there, and they're not really telling me anything about my CPU. So let me show you two fixes to that. Let's see, search term, ignore case. I made notes on that. Grip. -I. Grip -I. I don't know if it's lowercase or uppercase. Let's make sure it's not an L. Okay, nope, it's an I. So again, even if there were things with lowercase MHZ and any kind of mixed case in there, this is still the only two entries. However, if you run this on your x86 based system, your Intel or your AMD box, you will get current information about how fast your CPU is running. So that's cool. Here's another good one. Again, only we'll get information here on the Pi, but not speed information that we're looking for. And I'm going to minus I this one as well. So there is a file that gets updated every time the computer boots. It's called the CPU info file, and it's in the whack-proc folder. So we just read it out directly, cat whack-proc, whack CPU info, and then filter out only the lines that have MHZ in there in any case. Nothing. So let's see what would be there if we didn't try to filter MHZ lines. Oh, not a ton of stuff, but there's information here on each of the 4 cores that this CPU has. So here's core number 2, core number 3, and it starts numbering at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So each of them will have very similar information to this. Useful. But doesn't show me the current speed. That's life. Now here's one that has to be installed. I think I've already installed this on this computer because I was testing it. And if not, it's a really simple, short install. This is a package, an installable package called hwinfo. So we run it with sudo hwinfo whack CPU after we've installed it. I didn't install it. It's quick. I think I probably installed it and then removed it. Yes, I want to do it. Buzz, buzz, grind, grind. Come on, show me you're simple and quick. If this starts to go slow, there we go, 11, 22%. It's moving along. And show me paint the fence. Good. So now I can run that hardware info, whack CPU. And again, no megahertz information here. This is very similar to the stuff you find when we cat proc CPU or CPU info. But lots more information available on an x86 machine. Why so much x86 stuff, Dave? This is a Pi's thing. There's another package that has to be installed. I'm not going to do this one. It's called auto-CPU freq, CPU FREQ. And I'll show you the command. And for this, oh, this will be interesting. I'll show you something nice here. This is going to fail, but we run it with sudo auto-CPU freq, and then this is a minus monitor. Nah, don't have it installed. If you want to install it, it's not in the repo. You've got to go through some steps, and let me show you briefly where you can find those steps. Just going to copy and paste this and put this on that line. So if you are watching on archive or later, just pause this screen and write this down and then browse for it. So you're going to go to https linoxide or linoxide.com, tools, and all of this happy junk. And that'll take you to a tutorial on how to install AutoFreq on a Raspberry Pi or any other system, any other Linux system. Almost done. DMI Decode. DMI Decode is a really powerful program. The speed information not available on Pi. This is Intel only, but lots of other stuff on here. So let me just do the DMID code and just look at the processor information that it sends out. Oh, oops, got to sudo it. Fine. Oh, I thought with this all over the place today. I forgot. This is 100% Intel and AMD. Read the rest of the notes, Dave, and it'll say a full featured information script. Oh yeah, there's a the only works on x86, flat out, simple, straightforward. And then one last one. This one is going to fail. This is a script that has to be installed, and you can install it with sudo apt install. And it's called INXI. This is a script that gathers textually most of the information that you can get if you were to run something like CPU-Z on this computer. It doesn't exist. CPU-Z doesn't work for Linux at this point, and certainly not for Raspberry. But those are a whole bunch of utilities that are just awesome for gathering information about, in some computers, speeds and facts, and in Raspberry Pi, a little bit of speed-oriented information at any rate. There we go. Clean that up. And back to this. All right, so I mentioned this a little bit ago. I don't want to demo this to you, but I do want to tell you about it. How are we doing here? 50. That's fine. We'll finish this little shindig and then start projects. Well, answer questions and start project. So as I said, I am experimenting with a new search engine. My search engine of choice for the last year and a half, 2 years, has been DuckDuckGo. And it's a fine search engine. When I'm looking at my search engine, my first two priorities are, number one, how good of a search does it perform? Does it get me the information that I want or that I need? And my second priority, I'm the paranoid type. I don't do anything bad on my computer, but I don't want anybody knowing what I do on my computer. I don't want anybody tracking me. And DuckDuckGo is very good for privacy. It doesn't gather information about you. It doesn't save information about you. If I go look up invisible aardvarks, I won't later on get pop-up ads selling invisible aardvarks. I don't get those anyways because of my Pi-hole and because I use Brave browser, but so be it. The problem for me with DuckDuckGo is it's not the greatest search engine. I'll use it, and if I get information that I need, terrific. It uses an API into the Bing search engine. Bing searches are okay, but they are not as complete as the Google search engine results. Now, I'm terrified of Google. They are collecting everything about me, including the length of my shoelaces. So I use them sparingly, but if I don't get what I want on DuckDuckGo, then I'll head over to Google. So I switched to Quant. It has the same privacy powers that DuckDuckGo does. And I'm not sure, I haven't looked into whose search engine, if they're using their own, if they're stripping Google or if they're stripping Bing. But in my 2 days of testing so far, everything that I've searched for has generated satisfactory results for me. So I'm going with that I'm committing to it for a month. Hopefully not having to back up. We're about to get something at the door. Use a backup like Google. And I'll let you know. Give it a try if you're interested. Let me know what your experiences are. It's Quant, QWANT.com. And it was one of the selectable choices in my Brave browser. They default to DuckDuckGo, but I just changed the default to Quant, and I'm a happy guy so far. Okay, did that. So what I'm going to do is check the feed real quick, and then we're going to dive into Le Projet. Ooh, a little French there. So, oh, lots of stuff has popped up in there. I was around the 230s. Reading questions. Andre's ready to be Texan. He's got hats, belt buckles, guns, boots. I think that makes you an honorary Texan. When I moved to the state, one of the first things you do is, as you move from state to state in the U.S., is change your driver's license. Every state issues its own driver's license. We don't have national driver's license. So I went in, I took my written, and that's all I had to do, and took my picture, and eventually this big Texas state trooper came out and called me by name, and I stood up and stood in front of him, and he said with this thick Texas drawl accent, he said, "You are now a Texan," and he handed me my license. "You are certified to eat glass and chase rattlesnakes." So I've been chasing rattlesnakes and eating glass for the last 30 years now. Switching to PC, followed on mobile. Yeah, that's a pain to follow on mobile on YouTube for me. And I got the biggest phone I've ever had, and I can watch it, but it just, give me a 27-inch monitor. That's my raison d'etre. Reading questions. Zach is hopefully going to join us. Get a grip. Go away. I have a good question at 2:43, says Zach. Total Seminars channel. It's a little too long for on here. So when you come on Discord, okay, I will be on Discord after the show, and I will talk with you about your question then, along with all the very bright people who hang out there. Red is talking to Alex. Maven, I type D message without sudo. Yes, it will give you less results if you run it without sudo, Maven. And it still gives you a lot. You're exactly right. You will also get not as much information if you're not logged in as a supervisory account. Hoping to do my Net Plus next week. Yeah, yours is on the 11th. I was all geared up thinking that Alice is on the 11th. Hers is the 5th. Yours is the 11th. That explains it all. Delwitt and Scott are talking, passing 246. Alice talking to Red. Tell us his comment about Alice's full name. Yeah, I mentioned this a week or so ago that it took me all this time since having known Alice to put together that a portmanteau of Alice and Linux. So I'm an idiot. We all know that. My degree has nothing to do with IT. That's true. She's a linguist. And a cunning one at that. Ooh, did I go there? I'm going to get a message on the back channel right now smacking me. Try hacking.com. Yeah, it's a useful thing. Jane Slaver is everybody's talking to everybody, and that's okay. Ads on your table. Yeah, right. Yeah, wait till that happens when, television broadcasting is going away and there's more and more cord cutters. And so, yeah, what we call television is really a big monitor, and you're feeding it from a feed on your Roku or your Pi or your regular computer or whatever. Google does love me. They certainly know more about me than my missus. I see what you did there. Clearly, your Pi hole is working. Reading questions, and they're all horrible puns. I'm going blind looking at them. You overclocked your Pi hole? I hope not. That would be such a waste. There's such a low load on Pi hole. Alex talking to Zach and Andre, and Jane Slayer talks to me. Do you have previous archive episodes about setting up a Pi hole? Yes, I do. And I'm going to ask Scott to do a quick peek. Wait a minute, I can do this. Did we do that? Yeah, we did it in 2020, not 2021. Drama. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm going to ask Scott to look that up if he can. And Scott, if you'll back channel me, if you can't do that, the Pi hole episode, then I will look that up here before we get started on the big project. Hey, posted links already to Pi hole episodes. Way to go. Thank you, Scott. So yeah, if you'll scroll down just a little further, sometime after 254, Scott has posted a link on how to set that up. And I'm very pleased to say one of our production people who do videos and the stuff like that. He was doing some reviewing of my indices, and he ran across that, and I've given him a pie a while back. We did pie hole on September 11th, and again completed it on September 18th of 2020. So that's all in the archives. So he had a pie that I gave him a while back, and he said, I think I'm going to install this, and he followed along with that, and he's got a fully operational pie hole. So I'm very pleased. Let's see, Turbo's here as well. We should post as a regular thing the link to the channel with all the archives. I think it's youtube.com, whack Total Seminar channel or something like that. But every show that Mike has done and that I've done, and some other shows that have happened in between, some of our partners post on our channel, or we post their stuff. And we got lots of other archive stuff that goes before March 30th when we started this process. Super scrolled, but I'm almost at the end, so that's cool. There you go. So Scott posted that link at 2:55 for pie hole setup. And Jane Slayer acknowledged it. I'm just wasting my breath here. Zach, I haven't booked my exam yet. So you weren't to me, Dave. Okay. It's on the 11th. You got 6 days, man. I mean, unless you're going to change your deadline. But we know Mike's deal, right? Heat and pressure make diamonds. Don't change your deadline. Put that deadline in, and that'll force you to finish it up. The power of links. Red Tuber, Scott. Well, my time has come. Signing off. Thank you for coming in, Red Tuber. Catch us again on AMAs and catch us again. Yeah, I know you've been on Discord with us before. Look forward to seeing you there again. Total Seminars channel. I'm pretty sure the overclock pie hole was a reference. And so begins the Tullowitz Zach Wars. Yes, it's very different. All right, well, that takes us to, question 3 o'clock. We're right on schedule or so. So I'm going to talk about accessing resources inside a NAT router. I'm going to do a little bit of a NAT review here. And I got to warn you, I'm going to show you where and some of the steps of some of these processes. But as I was experimenting with them, I got 3 different things and more. And they started to get confused with each other and conflict with each other. And so I cleared them all off. And I'm just going to show you the where to finds and the how to do's. And then one night this week, I'm going to pick one of them and I'm going to set it up on one of my pies in-house. And when we start the show next week, I'm going to give you my public IP address and you can access a Pi server that's sitting right here on my desk. I'll put something cool on it so I'll know when you're logged in and who you are. It'll be interesting. And, I'm trusting you here. I'll cut it off in a heartbeat if it gets abused. But you're a good group. I don't expect anything to happen. Hey, I got to do a refresh on this screen for a second. I will not disappear. See, it's happening right now, and I'm still here. You're still seeing me, I'll bet. But something's frozen on my screen. And I must update it. That's weird. Come on. Finish filling up. There we go. Change it back to live chat. The stamps are still there, and we are time marked for the last question was done at 3 o'clock. We still see you. Great. Thank you. Okay. So off to notes. This week's projects, NATS routers. Okay. So we start with a simple premise. He says, as if it were really truly simple, a NAT router. NAT is network address translation, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of address translations. The ones that we run across that is built into your Soho router at your small office or your home or your apartment right now, or whatever you got, uses a thing called port translation. I'm going to show you exactly how that works. some of our presentations, we got a little simplistic, and that's okay because that's all you need to know for CompTIA. But this group tends to want a little more in-depth, and I'm going to provide it. So what we're going to be doing is translating the IP address and port number of a server, of a host, of a service inside a NAT network into a public IP address and a port for that public IP address so that it can exist on the internet or across the internet, get routed. And then when it comes back, it will be detranslated back. That's broad strokes. The way we've described it in some of our books and some of our other videos is an outbound packet from a private host inside a NAT network stops off at the NAT router. The NAT router makes some notes about it and then recreates a new packet using its own public IP address and sends it out. Truthful, but let's get specific about what those notes are. So next is a NAT resource. A NAT resource is any box with an IP address and a process. Well, let's go anybody and a process which has a port number that lives inside the NAT side of a router. We'll call it the LAN side, we'll call it the NAT side, we'll call it the local side. All those three terms, for the sake of this presentation, will be interchangeable. The other side of the NAT router is the WAN side or the public side. Those will be our interchangeable terms there. Okay, so what's important about what's on the NAT side of a NAT router? Well, all of the hosts use private IP addresses. They don't theoretically have to, but it's problematic if you don't, or can be. So do I have a pi in reach? We'll pretend. Here's a pi. And this pi has a private IP address. We know that there's three ranges of them. There's 10 dot anything, anything, anything. There's 172.16 dot anything, dot anything through 172.31 dot anything, dot anything. And there's 192.168 theoretically dot any third octet, but that's part of the network address. And then the fourth octet is an IP address. So 192.168.1 dot anything, 192.168. So we'll call it 192.168.0 dot anything through 192.168.255 dot anything. Those are all private IP addresses. And the trick about private IP addresses that we care about is they are not routable. Every router that's ever been built or designed for commercial use outside of a testing laboratory says, if I see a packet with that source address or that destination address in the IP header, discard it. It will not cross the router. It can't be routed. And so, I'll follow my notes here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So a NAT router is a router. It's a router like any other box. It's got two or more interfaces. What makes it different than any other router is one of the interfaces that it has a public IP address, and the other one has a private IP address. And between the two of those things, we have this translation process, this NAT translation. All right, so there's our two. So we may also call the one with the public interface an external interface. It leads to the external network. It connects to your ISP typically. It's got a public IP address, which it received from your ISP. And in that assignment either came from DHCP, a DHCP server running at your ISP, or if you pay for it from your ISP, they can give you a static IP address and you can program that into your WAN interface, your public interface, your external interface, interchangeable terms. So here is the big rule about NAT. Nothing can access from the public side to the private side. Nothing. It is the most brilliant firewall. If you don't do anything to it, nothing is going to ever get from the outside of your internet, from some hacker's machine out there in Never Never Land. He can't get through your NAT router to the public side to the private side until or unless we do something to allow that. So it's a very safe thing. NAT routers are designed to say, I will accept an outbound packet from a host inside the NAT network. I'll translate it into something public so it can live on the internet. It gets delivered out to wherever it's going, some web server, some FTP server, some whatever. That whatever responds, sends it back to the public IP address of the NAT router. The NAT router detranslates the response back to the private IP address and port, and then it sends it on to the local network. So there is no way for an external entity to initiate contact, that's the key word here, with an inside resource. It can only respond to communication that was initiated by an insider. Right? That's the cardinal rule. That's the golden rule of NAT and its protection. And that's its downfall. What if I have a box that I want to be able to be accessed from the outside world? Well, that's what this whole shindig is about, right? There's something buzzing in my house, I'm afraid. Okay, going through nets. So why do we use NAT routers? We've covered this 14,000 times in Mike's AMAs, but the short answer then is because we're out of IPv4 addresses. There's lots of, the people add subtleties to that. And what do you mean out of? And they're out. You can't call your ISP and say, I've got 5 computers inside my house. I would like a public IP address for each of them. Actually, you can. They have blocks of them, but they have them because they were handed out by the elders of the internet. And they're not just going to give them to me. They're going to charge me for them to the nose. So since I don't want to pay for some static IPv4 IP addresses, NAT routers allow me to create an unlimited, for all intents and purposes, number of private IP addresses. And through the translation process, they can share the single public IP address. That's pretty cool. Okay, let me show you a little bit about the process. We'll do it pictorially. Okay, so here is a typical NAT router. Let's blow that up a little bit. Too big. There we go. So this thing is the router. This is the interface with the public IP address. This goes to the internet to your ISP. And I've given it, for our example, an IP address, a public IP address, 99.100.101.102. And then here is the interface that's on the NAT side of my router. He's got a private IP address, 192.168.0.1. This particular NAT router has a switch in it so that I can hardwire connections, and it's got a Wi-Fi connection in there. These things all have the same IP address. They're just all connected to the same switch. So in between the two of those things, we've got the NAT process. I have to shrink these back down to go page by page. Limitation of Microsoft. So let's expand our network a little bit. Let's connect a host inside of our computer. This might be a PC. This might be a Raspberry Pi. It might be a server. He's connected to the switch. And here's another one. Maybe this is a laptop. Maybe this is a desktop with a Wi-Fi interface or USB dongle in it. So he's talking to my WAP wirelessly. Doesn't matter. This is just another way of getting to the internet through the Soho router. So out there, somewhere in internet land, there is a server. It's a web server, and I've given it the IP address of 11.12.13.14. And we've given some IP addresses to our 2 example hosts inside our network. This is on a network address 192.168.0. So the interface here is 0.1, the interface here is 0.10, the interface here is 0.20. It's just a simple network. Clearly our direction is going to be one of these computers needs to access this web server. using NAT. So the NAT process, we pick this machine. This machine says, I want to initiate contact with the web server. So he builds an IP packet. And the packet says to 11.12.13.14, port 80, that's a web server port. My name is 192.168.0.20, and I have picked the ephemeral port of 6789 to talk to you. He doesn't know that he can't actually directly talk to that server. He thinks he can. And NAT will take care of the fact that he couldn't if it wasn't for NAT. So NAT starts filling out a table. He says, okay, I got a note here. I got a request to forward a packet and to do a port forward from 192.168.0.20, ephemeral port 6789. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate that into my public address, destination address, 11.12.13.14. I think I might have messed up a slide here. This should have had the public address, but sit tight. See if I did that right. Yeah, I've translated this a little bit. These are supposed to be the IP addresses of the public interface for the server, but that's all right. We'll pretend here. So we finished this out then. This guy inside the NAT side of the route of the network is sending a message to 11.12.13.14:80, and this should say 99.100.101.102, and it's picked its own ephemeral port, 3217. And he's going to send that out, and eventually that response is going to come back. Oh, by the way, while that was happening, I opened up another tab in my browser here and said, I want to go to a different server in that tab. So from 192.168.0.20, ephemeral port 1355. Each tab gets a new ephemeral port. I want to contact a web server at 147.6.32.9, port 80. And so the NAT router says, okay, I'm going to translate that into 99, 100, 101, 102, and then he'll come up with a port address of, he just picked one at random, 6022. So this is a recreation. Oh, now we got another system involved. Now this guy says, hey, I want to talk to some resource out on the network. Okay, we'll add you to the table from his IP address, 192.168.0.10, ephemeral port 16045. I want to talk to some device out there at 92.207.74.11. It's a web server, :80. Okay, I'll make a public address for it, and I'll pick my own ephemeral address as the NAT router of 3401. So here comes the responses for those things. Some server out there at 11.12.13.14 sends a message back to 99, 100, 101, 102, port 3217. And this will do a reverse translation. He'll strip off his inbound IP packet and replace it with 192.168.0.20:6789, and then send it out the switch, and with a MAC address, of course, and it winds up here. So there's a couple of really cool things going on here. Let's say some server called up here and said, my IP address is 11.11.11.11, process 80:80. Well, when it comes into here, this guy's going to check and say, do I have any outbound conversations that are going on with 11.11.11.11? Nope, I don't. So that packet gets evaporated. Nothing happens to it. So this is how the second layer of protection. He won't allow anything to come in from the public side that's got a private address on it. And now he won't let anything come in that isn't in conversation and being tracked in the NAT table. Man, that's awesome. So NAT prevents initial contacts from the public side. Packets addressed to private IP addresses aren't forwarded. There's no port translation map for packets that are sent to the public IP address if there's no ongoing conversation here. Now you can talk to me about man in the middle attacks and fine, but we're just talking about basics right now. Woohoo. So that's how a NAT table works if it has correct IP addresses in it. Sorry about that. Hey, like I said, I worked till 2 o'clock this morning and then worked another 4 hours on it today. That could have been trouble. Okay, back to notes. So the goal here is I want to make access from the outside world available to my inside thing. Got 3 methods to do that. Does NAT cause overheating? No, they're designed to handle a particular load. When they get overloaded, they reject packets. There's packet drops. But that's one of the things that makes one NAT router better than the other. How many simultaneous conversations, how many entries in the NAT table can be tracked? But whatever that maximum is, the router is designed to handle that max and then to drop packets if it exceeds the max. Good question. All right, so NAT's useful. It allows us to expand our available number of hosts, even though the elders of the internet don't want to give me more IP addresses. It provides excellent protection from external hosts trying to access my NAT resources. Now, if you're going to do a real honest to goodness port forward, and let me get this cautionary note out of the way. I'm going to show you several methods today to let external hosts contact a NAT host. That opens up vulnerabilities. So the solution to that vulnerability, solutions are, number 1, good firewalls. Number 2, secure your internally accessible hosts with secure protocols, TLS, VPNs, things like that. And let's go a step further. If you're really serious about this and you want to protect your network, you need a double router DMZ. Mike talks about it in his Udemy courses. I'll do it here another time if you want me to do it. But and you can look it up, double firewall DMZ, and that way there's safe ways to put a host in a DMZ, excuse me, without putting the rest of your network at risk. So last week we made a chat server. It's not accessible to anybody except people inside my network, and that's no good. I'm going to open it up to the outside world. So 3 methods today. The simplest and initially the least secure until you start putting on some security pieces is port forwarding. And port forwarding looks like this. Did a bunch of graphics on this. Let's see how badly I screwed them up. Okay, share. Okay, so here's our router. Now I've got it right. The IP address of the router is 11.12.13.14. And here is a web server sitting inside my network that I want somebody to be able to access. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a port from a list of available ports in the router. Port 80 is available, okay? And I'm going to say if any traffic ever comes in from the public side to this IP address, 11.12.13.14, port 80, to redirect that traffic to the internal network on 192.168.0.20, port 80. These two don't have to match. Sometimes it's important that they don't. So once the port is forwarded, users access the server by browsing to the public IP address and the forwarded port number. So I'm at your house, I open up a browser, I type in, for the moment, my IP address, 11.12.13.14:80. Now, web browsers always assume :80, so you don't have to do that, but it doesn't hurt if you do that. And when that thing wends its way through the internet, finds its way into this interface, it hits this table. The table says, okay, you made it into my IP address. You called for port 80. I will translate that into the IP address and port that some host inside is supposed to be running, and I'll send it out a switch port or a wireless port or whatever. So maybe I set up a secure service on here. Got one running at 192.168.0.20:443. Fine, I'll go back over to the router and I'll do the same thing. I'll forward port 443 traffic. And again, this could be some totally different number if you want. Somebody over on the far side of the internet says, I want to go to 11.12.13.14:443. They can head that off by just starting it out by https://11.12.13.14. Comes into here. It's got a valid IP address for this interface. It's got a valid port in the forwarding table. So it gets redirected here. Port numbers don't have to match. This would be an interesting thing. Let's say that I set up a web server here running on port 80, but in order to access it, you've got to come to my public interface, and you got to go to 11.12.13.14:3500. It's kind of a security measure, but not a very secure one. So these don't have to be one-to-one mapping in most routers. Doesn't have to be 80 to 80. And that would be really important in a router like this. Maybe you've set up the web interface to manage this thing on port 80 and made it accessible from the outside. That would be a crazy, unsecure thing to do. Utterly nuts, but it can be done. And so port 80 is now no longer available for forwarding. So maybe we use 8080 or 3500 or whatever you want. So if you use non-standard ports, you have to include them somehow in your utility that you're using to access my local resource here. The Rocket Chat server that we built last week runs on port 3000. So I'll use a one-to-one mapping example here. I put 3000 in here. It redirects to 0.20:3000. It's a nice simple thing to do. But maybe I want to obscure it. Maybe I set up the forwarded port to be 12,899. I'd have to tell all my people who are going to use my Rocket Chat server that when they open up the chat window, it's a browser tab, to put in this IP address, 11.12.13.14:12,899. But that'll get them here. And of course, it works the opposite direction. These things get sent back through NAT. That starts to get fun now. Now we've got NAT and routing all going together. How about multiple hosts running multiple servers? Sure, why not? Here's a web server and an SSH server. Web server's running on port 80. SSH is running on port 22. They're both on a computer with an IP address of .10. So, okay, .10, port 80 and 22. I did one-to-one mapping here. Did one-to-one mapping here. Oop, screwed that up. I'm going to redirect 80 on one of these. I can't redirect 80 on the other one of these. I should have made this 8080, because here's the other server running a web server on port 80 and a chat server on 3000. So 3000 one-to-one. This should be 8080 or some other number. Oops, that's the ngrok one. We're coming back to him. All right, so that's how basic port forwarding works. Let's set one up. Can you do that, Dave? Yes, I got a router here that I pulled off of the dust shelf. How are we doing on time? 28. We might make it. Okay, I need a browser tab. I got one right here. Share this. So this is an old 802.11g router. And this is so old that it mandates one-to-one mapping. So whatever the IP address range, the public IP address of this router is, it's not hooked up to anything, so it doesn't have one, but let's pretend it's 11, 12, 13, 14. And this doesn't allow me to do anything but port ranges. Instead of a single port, I have to specify a range from this port to that port. Okay, if I make them the same, then it's a single port. So I said, I'm going to create an application here, the name of some application on a server that's running inside my network. Let's make one like FTP. And FTP runs on port TCP port 21. So we're going to say TCP 21 through 21. And you have a choice here of setting up either TCP or UDP or both. And then we tell it what to do with any packets that come into 11, 12, 13, 14, colon 21. It has to send it to the same one-to-one matched port 21 on this router. That's just a limitation of the router. And maybe the FTP server that I'm running on is 192.168.1. I don't know, 15. Whatever the IP address of that server is. I save the changes, buzz, 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 grind, grind, grind. I'm done. I am port forwarded. So anybody who wants to use my FTP server, all they have to do is send a packet to the public IP address of this router, 11.12.13.14, colon 21. And that packet, that contact, that information, that upload, that download will be directed to 192.168.1.15, colon 21. Cool. It's simple. It's easy. And it's horrifically unsafe because there are people who will get into that server and use commands from FTP to find out other things about my network. They may be able to use commands in my FTP server to access other devices in my network. So very unsecure, but it's okay for a short-term experiment. I have some port forwards available to an isolated network, a multi-router DMZ in here. So I'm not too awfully worried about it. Oh, that was Rick Allison who asked if NAT case is overrode, not Alex. Okay. Had to get that blinker out of my way. Next. So there's two problems with this, with using port forwarding besides security. You can deal with security, you can TLS it and set up other secure aspects. Problem number one is people have to access it by its IP address. So we got to teach them how to type in IP addresses and port numbers. Now we can also teach them, and this can be done with notification on a website or something like that, or if you're only making this available to family and friends, you can send them an email or call them or send them a text or whatever, and talk them through accessing on the browser line or making a bookmark for it. But it still comes down to it's got to be an IP address. And that's the other problem. What if it's an IP address on your on the public side of your NAT router that's assigned by DHCP? It's going to change sooner or later. Some people get really lucky and they last for a year or two, but they change as conditions over the ISP change and all kinds of other reasons. I can count on mine changing typically 2 times a year, sometimes 3. Now I have port forwards in my router. Does that change affect them? No, that's the good news. I don't have to go into the router and make any modifications. I don't have to make any modifications to the servers running in my system. All I have to do is let the outsiders who are accessing my internal resources know that the IP address has changed. Well, fine if there's 10 of them, but what if there's 50 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000? Well, what a pain. And that's even true for me. I'm the only one who knows that, and I don't give access to anybody in the outside world. I use those port forwarded access to various servers so that I can demonstrate this process when I'm doing a stand-up class. And I have in my handy dandy phone an FTP client, an SSH client, certainly a web browser. And so I have to go in here and change the IP address in all those saved configurations to the updated new IP address. Possible solution, buy a static IP address from your ISP. Sometimes that's relatively inexpensive, $5 a month for a single static IP address. More often, you can count on 50 to $100 per month for that stuff. So, unless you've got a compelling business reason to do this, that can be a fairly expensive proposition. So let's fix that with solution number 2, allowing access to resources from outside the network. We're going to use a process now called DDNS, Dynamic Domain Name Service. It has a lot in common with port forwarding. In fact, it requires port forwarding, but it's got 2 benefits. Number 1, it's a DNS service. I can register my resource, maybe it's my router, maybe it's individual devices inside my NAT network, with a traditional DNS name. So people can remember that a lot easier than 11.12.13.14. That one's not too bad to remember, but what if you got a really, wacky typical one, 147.0.79.211? I won't be able to remember that 3 sentences from now. But if we give it a name like Dave server dot whatever domain we're working with, people can remember that a heck of a lot easier. So we will register our stuff with the DNS portion of a DDNS service. And then the other D, the dynamic aspect of it. Dynamic means it will track and update any changes to any IP addresses of the host internally or of your public interface of your NAT router. And the way we do this is by installing a little piece of software, a dynamic DDNS client in the router or on the host, and it phones the dynamic DNS service regularly to say, I'm online and here's my IP address. And if nothing changes, he says, good, I'll just keep my DNS servers as they are, and they're in contact with other DNS servers on the web, and so people can access them. If anything ever changes, the update will be communicated to the DDNS service. The DDNS service will make a change to its DNS tables, its domain name database. That will get propagated throughout the DNS system as necessary in the internet. And nobody has to know or do anything. The only thing you had to do was register with the DDNS service, identify which boxes you're going to use DDNS on, and install the little client monitor software onto that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the common DDNS services. There are thousands of them, tens of thousands perhaps. And some of them have free tiers, some of them have second level tiers, some of them have premium tiers. The free tiers, not surprisingly, don't have some of the benefits as the paid tiers and the premium tiers. For instance, one of the very popular ones out there is a company called NoIP. You can go find them at noip, one word, .com, and you'll see, you get on their products page, that their free tier is cool. You can have 3 DNS entries in there for resources inside your system. You pick the names and you pick a domain name from their choices. And every 30 days, they're going to send you an email for each of those things, remind you to check in. You have to say, respond to that email, reply to it, because otherwise they will assume you've abandoned it. And some people do that. I just set it up. I experimented with it for a month or 2 and okay, I'm done with it. I killed the server, whatever. So they want that thing to be taken out of their resources. They want the name to go back to their pile. So if that's not a horrible inconvenience for you, then that's a good way to go. I think I got a thing to that. Paid services have less limits. They do more convenience. They keep domains for a whole year without reminding you or pestering you. Support is an issue. On the free tier of NoIP, the only support you get is email. You send them, I have a problem, and it's this. And when their techs get around to reading and responding to emails, they'll reply. Maybe they'll ask you more questions, and you got to do back and forth emailing with them. Their paid tiers, you can talk to them by phone or by live chat or whatever. So let's take a look at no IP. That's ngrok, Dine DNS. There it is. Okay, share that. Okay, so here's noip.com. And what you do is you define a host name, Dave's web server, Dave's server, something short, I hope. And you can pick on the free tier one of these 4 domains. If you create an account and pay for a tier, then you get a lot more choices to pick from. So let's see what happens on their tiered and paid accounts. Okay, so they got a free DNS, they got enhanced DDNS. So you get 1 freebie domain choice. You can have 3 host names on that domain. And that's it compared to their other goodies. You can have 80 domain choices to pick from here and 25 different host names that you can do dynamic DNS. And it kills ads, and you don't get the 30-day, hey, you sure you want to still do this? And you get phone service. And this one doesn't say how much it is. It's, I think this one's 25 a month. Nope, this one's 55 a month. I remember. Here's another one. Used to be called Dine DNS. And if you go to dinedns.com, you'll be taken to account.dine.com. Their free tier is only good for 7 days. Then you got to buy it. But look at the number of choices, even on the free tier of the domains that you could pick from. Lots of .coms in here, lots of funky things in there. How about ftpaccess.cc? I can make Dave's FTP server .ftp.access.tc. And you can check and see if anybody's already using the names you're planning to. So this is huge. Love this stuff. And if we want to buy from them, they got 2 tiers, one for 25 and one for 20. Oh, here's the 55. $55 a year. So that's a little pricey. For my blood anyways. The process is simple, really super simple, if you are using a PC or a Mac. They have clients ready to go and ready to install for that. You just sign up, they'll send you a download link and give you the instructions on what to do with that. If you're dealing with a Pi, then you got a little bit more work to do. Let me go down to my notes here, and then I'll show you something, IP tutorial link. Okay. Sharing things out. So I have a couple different tutorials that you can use to go set up. I'm not doing this as a demo, like I said, because of the conflicts with dealing with all these different kinds of services at the same time. It's doable, but it takes more time than I was able to set up here. So over at tutorials, raspberrypi.com, hey, you can't go worse than or go better than going straight to the source. Here's how to put a Raspberry Pi web server installation, and just go to part 6, and they'll tell you how to set up a DDNS server using no IP and how and where to get a client for it. Coolness. If you choose to use one of the Dine DNS ones, you got to cough up $55 a month. But the client is really cool. The little phone home application, it's installable from the repository. All you got to do is sudo apt install dd client. And then there's another one, sudo apt install dd update. Just put that on the host that you want to be using DDNS from one of the Dine DNS platforms. Register yourself there. It's really straightforward and simple stuff. It's all walk through, talk through. You don't need a demo for me to tell you about that. Now, all modern routers these days come with something really cool. So let me go back to that router and show you one more thing with respect to DDNS. Let's see, it's on the web page. So the web server's over here. Click, click. This. Share that. And we're looking. Apps and gaming, port range forward, port trigger for DMZ. It's almost like I remembered where it was, even though I just did this morning. All right, let's go to setup. DDNS, there we go. So some routers have built-in partners that they deal with. So all you got to do is talk to dinedns.org, and you'll save settings, and it'll automatically give you the information that dinedns.org wants. Now, this router is so out of date, dinedns.org doesn't exist anymore, and there's no updated firmware. But if you buy a modern or a current router, it will have one or more DDNS services that you can create a name and a password and a host name for your server. And then when it contacts, there will be information on how you can specify. Oh, no, it's going to DDNS straight to this host, so to the router. Yeah, go experiment. Go looking around in your routers today. All right, that's 2 for 3. The last one, we mentioned it last week by name. There's a product out there called ngrok. You can find it at ngrok.com, N-G-R-O-K. And he is the third fix for this process. Now, he's not the only game in town that does what he does. He's the big name right now, but I'm going to show you some alternatives to them, and they have some pros and cons. So ngrok has an internal client thing, but it doesn't track, well, it does. It tracks IP addresses, but it is a contactor. It initiates contact with the ngrok servers to the outside. So the outside isn't going to initiate contact to access your internal resources. It's going to contact or respond to the contact application from inside. That means I don't have to port forward. Cool. Also, the ngrok servers out there are DDNS servers. So you can register domain names with them. It can take care of, as part of this bidirectional communication process going on, any changes to IP addresses and host names and things like that. And thirdly, it will create a virtual private network of private tunnel between the ngrok servers and your shared host. Let me show you that. And then I'll give you a little info on how to do it, show you some alternatives, and then we're going to wind this presentation up. Huzzah. No IP tutorial links. Okay, we'll need that, but that's not what we're sharing right now. Oh, this. There we go. Share that. Okay, so here's my internal server that I want to share. It's Rocket Chat. Very pertinent question. Okay, I'll get right on it because I'm just about done, Scott. There will be time to answer it. So here's my server. It's a Rocket Chat server. It's a web server. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to install an ngrok client on that. And that's not one that you can get from a repository. But I'm going to show you a tutorial where you can get the client. You can download and install it. So you log in with a regular old machine to ngrok server. You register. You create an account name. You identify what's going to be over here, and just do all the usual login and register kind of stuff. And then this little client will establish a VPN tunnel to the ngrok servers somewhere out on the internet. It'll give it a DNS name, davesftpserver.com. I wish. And now when some user out on the internet wants to find me, She can do a DNS lookup. She can Google it. I could tell her. I could post it on a web server, whatever. All she has to do is open up her browser or her FTP server or her Rocket Chat page or whatever and type in Dave's rocketchatserver.com. That will go over here and it will be passed into the VPN tunnel straight to my server. And the response will go straight out. NAT will still happen here. I don't care about that. But what's mostly important is I didn't have to port forward out of here. So because I'm VPN and because I'm not port forwarded, it's a very, very secure solution. So let me show you where to get some information on this. Couple. So of course you can go directly to ngrok.com. And on the main page, there's a link that takes you to their offerings page. I'll show you that in a second. Then we'll come back and look at these alternatives. So let's go visit ngrok.com ever so speedily. Okay, this is the home page for ngrok.com. We got how it works, pricing, docs, download. There's a free tier, but its problem is when you activate it, it will randomly create a host name for you. When you deactivate it, that host name goes away, and when you reactivate it, a new host name appears. Great for lab experiments, not good for long-term solutions. So free tier is free. You can get a basic solution with custom subdomains, server-side ops, and some other goodies for $5 a month, or more and better services for $8.25 up to $12 a month billed annually. It's a decent solution. The installation on your side takes a few steps. It's not something that anybody couldn't do. It's just step-by-step, follow the tutorials. Dave, do you have some tutorials for that? Yes, I have two. Let me show them to you. You already saw one of them in the tutorial that we used to do the Rocket Chat installation last week. That's this one, GitHub.com, Rocket Chat, rocket.chat.raspberry Pi. About 2/3 the way down are the steps to set up ngrok access. And then here's another one. Again, you can just pause this if you're watching the archive and write it down or type it into a browser. And this is a soup to nuts, how to set up ngrok on any kind of shared NAT service. Not going through the step-by-step because of time constraints and because of conflicts. But again, I will have one set up for you next week. They're very easy to do. Okay, last thing, alternatives. Going to the page. No. Where'd the alternatives page go? There it is. Two minutes and we're done, and then I'll answer critical questions. Okay, so if you go, this is a link that I found, softwaretestinghelp.com, ngrok-alternatives. Now, whenever you see these things, it says best or top alternatives in 2021. That doesn't mean they're necessarily the best. That means it's clickbait. But I have looked into all of these and they're pretty good. So, and these are the 4 big name alternatives: Local Tunnel, Servio, Teleconsole, and PageKite. And so they compare them with some of the primary features against ngrok. So you got to sign in, generate an authorization token. No auth tokens for local, none for Servio, none for Teleconsole, and only once for PageKite. And then here's where you can get the free and pricing tiers and whether they support HTTP or HTTPS or SSH. You get the idea. You can follow this along. I'm not going to read this to you. It's a really good link, and it's easy experimenting. You can do this stuff. All right, so that winds up how to access using 3 common methods, resources from the outside to the inside. Let's go over and take a look at what kind of questions have popped up. And Scott says there is a very relevant one at time mark from Zach, very end of chat, 3:43 to 3:46. Oh, okay, hour time. Okay, I can do that. Oh, I had a whole bunch of sharing going on. I got to refresh this screen. Stand by 20 seconds. All right, I'm back up. Chat's coming back up. There we go. Go to live chat. And somewhere in the 343 zone. There we go. 343. Zach, total seminar channel. Can't you just connect a hard drive to your router and then set up port forwarding for free? Absolutely. Now, what are you going to do with that hard drive? You can't do SMB on it because SMB, AIM, Ben's calling. Can you get him? Excuse me. AIM, Ben's calling my phone. Can you get him? Either on my phone or calling back. So yeah, what are you going to do on this hard drive out of the network? If you use SMB, SMB isn't routable. I can't access SMB through my NAT router. But there are other services with hard drives that you could put on there, like FTP. So yeah, good to deal. All right. Scott, you want to join me for the last 5 minutes? And let me know if you found anything good, and we'll share, and you can say hi's and byes to everyone. If not, I'm just going to keep looking through here. I had a lot of stuff to catch up on. Dave draws his network diagrams like an engineer. Yeah, I'm a little more formal and less colorful than Mike. He makes way better graphics. I make all that stuff in Microsoft Paint. Gord, I'll be available after 9 p.m. Scott is typing on the back channel. He's not going to make it. I suspect that means. Not a true static. You can tag a URL to a VPN website supplied by IP. Okay, you guys talking together. I tried a link earlier, couldn't get in. Okay. I could fix it, but we'd be done by then. So I'm going to work from the back of the clock, working backward to see if anything came up recently here. That was one of my questions that I was going to ask later. It's OpenWRT, and you can host this type of router. Okay, yeah, I've used OpenWRT. Fine. Why would you need a DDNS? So that you can have a domain name, and so that it can automatically update when IP changes, or host name changes, or port changes, or things like that. Reading questions, writing it down right now, says Andre. That's weird. If I read backward, it'll be answers to questions that got asked. Dave could set that router up as a honeypot in a DMZ. Yeah, if I did that, I would just do a honeypot. Ruin my own joke. All right, I don't see any major questions that popped up. If there are any, Scott can tell me the time things. Otherwise, I'm going to start the wind up here. So let's talk about next week, I think is the way to go. Mike did not mention a special feature presentation on Monday. So regular show, regular time at 2 o'clock Central, right here on this very channel. As for me, I'm bouncing between 2 ideas. Okay, very good. Thanks, Scott. What am I bouncing between? Because we got all kinds of really fun and amazing stuff going on. Remember, we got Pi Day coming up on the 14th. And if we're able to do anything here about that, I'm going to do that on our show on the 19th. My 2 ideas that I'm primarily bouncing back and forth for next week are running Chromium from as a command line kiosk, which means you can use that for signage and internal web notification updates. You'll see what I mean. It's really, really cool stuff. Or I'm going to install a VPN server on a Pi. Those are my plans at this moment. So one of those is for next week. The other one, will be for the Pi Day Friday show, or for the real Pi Day show Or if I have trouble with either of them, I'll abandon them, and I've got another half a dozen in my list. Don't forget, we got discounts available. Use the code MARS2021 for Total Tester and Total Tester bundles. Contact myself or Scott, Dave R at TotalSem.com, Scott J at TotalSem.com, or the big guy, Michael M at TotalSem.com. And I got through all my slides and all my pictures. So there's nothing else I need to bring up. I'm very happy about that. Weather's great here. I hope it's warming up in your part of the world, except Tullowood. He's already got it gorgeous and wonderful. And I'm going to close this thing down. Oh, in 30 seconds, going to be perfect. I wish you a wonderful and safe weekend. As always, my eternal gratitude to you for joining us, for your good questions, for your interest in CompTIA certifications and PIs, and the same for Mike's show. Hope you all have a great weekend, and may the pandemic leave you just as soon as humanly possible. And with that, let me go over to the page with the big red kill button, and I'll go crazy. I'm going to shut it off right in the hour. I will say to you, good night.